Hi, this is Matt Whitmer from Brody Precision, and welcome back to Networking 101. In this video, we're going to look at DHCP. So if we look at our Niagara JACE TCP/IP configuration screen once again as reference, what we're going to be talking about is this checkbox right here that shows up underneath each interface, DHCP, and in our case, V4. It's just a checkbox that enables it and disables it. So what is DHCP? DHCP is the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, and what it does is it automatically assigns all the necessary parameters that a device needs to talk to a network that it's plugged into. So all those parameters that we talked about before, IP address, subnet mask, gateway, and your DNS servers, automatically come in from a server or from a router and get assigned to your device once you plug it into the network. This is what allows you to connect to a wireless network at your office without having to set an IP address in your computer manually. That's all DHCP, and it sort of happens behind the scenes. You don't even really think about it, but it is happening. So how it works. The DHCP picks an IP address from what it calls a pool of available addresses. So when you set up a DHCP server, you pick a range of IP addresses you want to use as your pool, and then the server will issue a lease for a valid period of time that your device can use that IP address, and that period of time is set by the server. Your device, once it gets halfway through its lease period, it will attempt to renew its lease with the server so that your IP address doesn't get taken by another device potentially. And another thing to keep in mind is you can set up what are called reservations in the DHCP server. And that basically links an IP address to a MAC address so that if another device comes in and maybe you haven't been on the network in a long time and haven't gotten an IP lease in a while, that other device won't be able to take your IP address because it doesn't have your MAC address. And in your case, that IP address is reserved specifically for the MAC address. An interesting thing to think about with the IP lease, the time period there, is something like a coffee shop. So maybe a coffee shop has a Wi-Fi network and it only has a smallish set of IP addresses that it wants to give out on its Wi-Fi network. You could potentially have a number of customers that come in a given day and you exceed that number of IP addresses that you have available. But most of the people who are coming in and out are only going to be in for a short period of time. So you can set that lease period very short in that case so that the IP address frees up quicker to be used by somebody else. So it's something just to keep in mind as to why that IP lease time matters. So in a JACE 8000, starting in Niagara 4.7, the secondary port of the JACE 8000 can be used as a DHCP server. And what that's good for is if you have a private network of devices that are talking on a specific driver, you can segment them off and not have to worry about potentially setting an IP address for every device if you didn't want to. You could also use it for daisy chaining devices downstream from that secondary port, or you can use it in tandem with the provisioning tools that are built into the later versions of Niagara 4 when you're deploying Niagara Edge devices. So instead of having to manually punch in an IP address, static IP address on each one of your Edge devices, your JACE in this case could automatically give out an IP address to each one of those devices. You could bring it up to your JACE and commission it and configure it directly from the JACE without ever having to really do any manual configuration in each individual Edge device. So that's a brief look at DHCP. In our next video, we're going to look at VLANs, which are virtual LANs, and it's something that comes up a lot when you're working with larger IT infrastructures in buildings. So we'll take a look at that in the next one. Thanks.